There is a moment in every life where silence becomes the loudest cry for respect. A moment when exhaustion turns into awakening. When your spirit, bruised but not broken, whispers to your heart, enough. And that moment, that sacred moment, is when you realize your worth does not lie in how often you're there for others, but in how deeply you honor yourself. For so long, you've been available. Always picking up the phone. Always showing up when no one else would. Always saying yes when every part of you screamed no. You gave, and you gave, until you forgot there was anything left to give to yourself. But the moment you stop being constantly available, everything changes. Your world shifts. People's true intentions are revealed, and you begin to feel the lightness of honoring your boundaries. Today, I want to speak to the heart that is tired of being taken for granted. I want to speak to the soul that feels invisible, even when it's standing in plain sight. And I want to remind you, when you stop being available to what drains you, everything changes. Your time is sacred, and not everyone deserves it. There comes a point in life when you start realizing that time is not just something you give, it's something you invest, and what you invest in reflects what you value. But the tragedy is we often spend so much of it on people who don't value us. We are taught from an early age that love means sacrifice, that kindness means availability. And while there is truth in giving, there is also a boundary in wisdom. Not everyone is worthy of your constant presence. You may have been the person who answered every call, replied to every message, showed up even when your soul was tired. But ask yourself, who did that leave you for? Who showed up for you? When your hands are always open to give, people begin to expect you to be empty. They stop asking if you're okay. They stop wondering if you need a moment. Your time becomes a tool for their comfort, not a reflection of mutual care. But when you decide to pause, to pull back, to become more intentional with your time, it creates a ripple. Some will misunderstand it. Others will resist it. But your spirit will exhale in relief. Your time is not just precious, it's sacred. It's a reflection of your energy, your purpose, your soul's alignment. And to give it away freely, without discernment, is to dim your own flame. You were never meant to be everyone's solution. You were never born to be constantly accessible while your own needs lay forgotten. You are not a lifeline, you are a life. Every minute spent in places where your value is not recognized is a minute stolen from your own healing. You deserve more than that. You deserve spaces where your absence is noticed and your presence is respected. And as you begin to honor your own time, you start seeing the truth in others. You see who calls because they care and who only calls because they want. You see who stays when you say not now and who vanishes when you set a boundary. Let it teach you. Let your silence become the loudest expression of self-worth. Let your absence recalibrate the room. Let your breath finally belong to you. There's no need to explain your unavailability. Growth often comes wrapped in solitude. And solitude isn't loneliness, it's elevation. You don't owe everyone your time. You owe yourself the peace that comes from protecting it. Because in the end, what you guard grows. And when you guard your time, you grow into the version of yourself that you were always meant to be. You stop rushing. You stop proving. You stop bleeding into places that were never meant to hold you. And in that stillness, you begin to live. Boundaries are not walls, they are bridges to self-respect. There is a powerful misconception that boundaries are barriers, that when you set limits, you're pushing people away. But what if it's the opposite? What if your boundaries are actually bridges, pathways that lead others into truly respecting who you are? We are often afraid to set boundaries because we're afraid to lose love. We think saying no will make people walk away. And yes, sometimes it does. But that's not the loss we imagine, it's the liberation we needed. When you say no, you're not being rude. You're being real. Real with yourself. Real with your needs. Real with the energy you are capable of giving. Boundaries are not about keeping people out. They're about keeping you safe. They create space for truth, for trust, for intention. They allow relationships to thrive, not just survive. Think about how often you've said yes with a heavy heart. How many times you agreed just to keep the peace, only to wage war inside yourself? That's not kindness, that's quiet pain. And your soul knows it. It feels it every time you silence your truth. Every time you stretch yourself thin. Every time you smile while your spirit quietly cries for rest. You are not selfish for protecting your peace. You are not difficult for saying, this is what I need to feel safe. That is your right. That is your power. When you start setting boundaries, you also start attracting people who respect them. You no longer surround yourself with those who demand your sacrifice, but with those who celebrate your wholeness. The shift might feel lonely at first, but it's not loneliness, it's detox. You're clearing space for people who love with depth, not just convenience. Boundaries teach others how to love you. They show what you accept, what you allow, and what you will no longer entertain. And in setting them, you remind yourself that you are worthy. Not of half love, not of constant compromise, but of full respect and sacred space. You stop living in reaction to everyone else's needs. You start living in alignment with your truth. And that truth sets you free. You will feel the change in your energy, in your body, in your relationships. It's as if your spirit sighs and says, thank you. I've been waiting for this. Boundaries are not punishment, they are protection. And the first person they protect is you. Not everyone who has access to you values you. Access should never be confused with appreciation. Just because someone can reach you doesn't mean they see you. And just because someone speaks to you doesn't mean they hear you. Many people are comfortable taking your time, taking your energy, taking your kindness, but few truly understand what it means to honor it. You've been available for people who disappeared the moment you needed them. You've answered texts, comforted souls, showed up at your lowest. And still, your presence was treated like an afterthought. It's a heartbreaking realization that some people only keep you around for convenience. You're the in case of emergency person, the backup, the last resort. And you've mistaken that position for loyalty. But when you begin to reclaim your time, when you stop responding so quickly, when you go silent, they notice, not because they miss you, but because they miss the benefit of you. And that's when the truth begins to shine through. You see who was clapping for you and who was only clapping for what you did for them. You see who asks how you're doing and who only calls to offload their pain. This isn't bitterness, this is clarity. And clarity is what allows you to walk in peace. The real ones will never demand your availability. They will cherish it. They will match your energy. They will protect your space even in your silence. You are not obligated to answer every call, every message, every pull on your spirit. You are not a public service. You are a sacred presence. And when people have easy access to something sacred, they often forget its worth. So sometimes you have to remind them not with words, but with distance. You don't need to shout your value. You just need to stop offering it where it's not respected. This is how you begin to surround yourself with reciprocity, with mutual care, with people who understand that just because you can be there doesn't mean you always should. In protecting your access, you protect your soul. And in doing that, you begin to live with a power that no longer needs validation to be complete. Emotional availability must begin with you. You cannot be emotionally available for others when you are emotionally abandoned within yourself. There's a quiet aching that lives in the heart of those who keep pouring without pause, who listen without being heard, who love without being held. You've probably been there so present for everyone else that you forgot how to be present with yourself. You knew everyone's pain, but when your tears fell, they fell in silence. That is not balance. That is depletion. We're taught that to be good, we must always be there. That emotional strength is about bearing other people's weight. But what if strength is also about knowing when to step back and say, I need me right now? Your first responsibility is not to everyone else, it's to the child within you. The version of you who was neglected, who craved safety, who wanted to be heard without fixing or judgment. That child still lives in you, waiting for your attention. Emotional availability means sitting with your fears, not silencing them. It means honoring your sadness, not rushing to be okay. It means loving yourself enough to say, I deserve the same care I give so freely to others. When you start listening to your own emotions the way you've listened to others, you start to heal. You begin to validate your own needs, your own dreams, your own limits. You stop seeking approval outside and find peace within. Sometimes we distract ourselves with other people's problems to avoid facing our own. But healing begins when you sit in the quiet and ask, how am I really doing? That's where transformation starts, not in being needed, but in being whole. You were never meant to be everyone's emotional caretaker. You are a soul, not a service. And your emotional well-being is your sacred ground. Protect it. As you reclaim your emotional space, you'll notice something beautiful. You no longer settle. You no longer chase. You no longer perform. You just be. And that being is enough. The moment you become emotionally available to yourself is the moment your life begins to change. Your choices become intentional. Your relationships become deeper. Your peace becomes non-negotiable. This isn't selfishness, it's survival. It's the decision to stop bleeding emotionally just to keep others from feeling empty. You will attract people who respect your boundaries because you respect your boundaries. You will draw love that does not drain but fills. And you'll finally realize that being emotionally available to yourself was the greatest love story of all. Healing isn't loud. Sometimes it looks like naps instead of texts, solitude instead of conversation, silence instead of explanation. This is your permission to come home to yourself, to make space within before you make space for others, to no longer abandon your heart just to save someone else's. Because the truth is, when your emotional availability begins with you, you stop trying to be everything for everyone and start becoming everything you were meant to be for yourself. Your absence will teach people what your presence meant. Sometimes the loudest message you can send is not with words, but with your absence. When you stop showing up, when you stop replying, when you stop making yourself small to make others feel whole. For so long, your presence was a gift wrapped in silence. You made things easier for others. You held the space, bore the weight, made sacrifices behind the scenes, but not everyone noticed. Not everyone cared. You were always there. The dependable one, the healer, the forgiver, the listener. And because you made it look so effortless, people assumed you didn't need anything in return, but you did. You needed rest, appreciation, reciprocity. And most of all, you needed to be seen not just when it was convenient, but when it mattered. The day you stopped being available, the air shifted, the energy changed. People felt it not because they missed you, but because they missed what you gave. And that's when you realize your presence had power. Your energy held things together. Your support was the glue in so many unspoken ways. You don't have to explain your distance. Absence speaks in ways that words never could. It teaches people what you endured silently. It shows them the strength you carried behind the smile. And while some will try to guilt you into returning, remember this. People who truly loved you would have noticed when you were still there. They wouldn't wait until your silence to feel your worth. Your absence becomes a mirror. It reflects the truth about your value, not only to others, but to yourself. It shows you that you don't need to chase, fix, or prove. You only need to be. You start realizing that you don't need closure to heal. You don't need applause to be valid. You don't need presence in places where your soul was once suffocating. Your absence is not about punishment, it's about protection. It's about pulling your energy back from where it was being wasted and giving it to the places that nurture you. People learn through loss. And while it's not your job to teach them, your withdrawal is often the catalyst they never saw coming. Let it be. Let your silence carry the wisdom of everything you were too tired to say. Let your absence be the reminder of what was once taken for granted. And while the world recalibrates without you, you will rediscover what life feels like when you're no longer constantly available to everything but yourself. You'll find peace, you'll find freedom. And most of all, you'll find you. At the end of the day, there comes a moment when your soul whispers, no more. No more stretching yourself for people who don't stretch for you. No more silencing your needs so others can speak louder. No more offering your light to those who only stand near you to stay warm but never once ask if you're cold. And in that moment, everything begins to shift. Because when you stop being available to what drains you, you become available to what restores you. You start to see your time as a sacred offering, not an obligation. You learn that your boundaries are not walls, but declarations of self-love. You begin to realize that not everyone who had access to you deserved it, and that access to your heart, your mind, your energy should never come without appreciation. When you stop showing up in places that make you feel small, you finally make room for the life that makes you feel whole. And yes, it will be uncomfortable at first. You'll feel the sting of silence. You'll notice who disappears. But that silence, that emptiness, it's not a loss, it's a clearing. It's the space where you will rise. Because peace was never found in constant availability. Peace was always waiting in the pause, in the no, in the step back, in the sacred return to self. Everything changes when you stop being available to people who only show up when they need something. Everything shifts when you stop being emotionally accessible to chaos and become emotionally loyal to yourself. And what begins as solitude ends as strength. You will be misunderstood. You will be called distant. But do not let that distract you from the truth you are healing. You are reclaiming your time, your worth, your voice. You are no longer choosing guilt over growth. This is what happens when you stop being available. You begin to live fully, freely, and fearlessly. And in that life, you find everything that was waiting for you on the other side of self-abandonment. So protect your peace. Guard your time. Honor your heart. Because when you stop being available to what breaks you, you become completely available to what builds you. And that is when everything truly changes.